Hi, I'm Emerson Deerwood, the person behind Joy to Create, and today we're going to be learning the waffle stitch. So here I have my yarn and my hook. It is a size 6mm hook. Honestly, you can use any hook that corresponds with your yarn for this stitch. I'm sorry I didn't have the type of yarn here, but I took some random yarn from my stash. And, here we get started, so let's make a slip knot. Like that. We're going to insert our hook and we're going to start to chain. So if you don't know how to chain, I'm going to explain it verbally or you can watch the video. All you're going to do is yarn over, as you see here, and then you pull through the loop on your hook, and that is a chain. So we're going to make some of those chains, and for the waffle stitch you do need a specific number of chains. So what you're going to do is you're going to chain a multiple of 3 plus 4. So here I'm just going to chain few. So I'm going to chain 15. That's my multiple of 3, and here is my 15 chains. And as you know, 15 is 3 times 5, so that is a multiple of 3. And now we're going to add 4, so 16, 17, 18, and 19. Perfect. So that is our multiple of 3 plus 4, and that is our chain. So now that we have our chain, we are going to work in the second chain from hook. So as you can see, we have our we have the loop on the hook, and we have the one after that, and one after that. And we are going to do a double crochet into that stitch. So I'm talking in US terms. In UK, double crochet would be a treble crochet, and you do this by yarn over, insert hook into stitch, yarn over, pull through stitch, like that, yarn over, pull through next 2 stitches, and then we do a yarn over and pull through the last 2 stitches. So, perfect. And that is our first double crochet stitch, and we are going to continue with the double crochet stitch across the row. So yarn over, insert hook and stitch, yarn over, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull through next 2 hooks, unhook, oops, yarn over, pull through last 2 loops, and we are going to repeat that all the way to the end of this chain. So again, in case you missed it, we are going to double crochet across our chain, and if you are thinking in UK terms, that is a treble crochet. So as you can see, I'm double crocheting, and here we are at almost at the end of our chain with our double crochet stitches. And I'm just going to go over the end with you because I like to go over the beginning and end. So we're going to double crochet, yarn over, insert hook and stitch, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull the next 2 and next 2. And again. And finally, one more time for that last stitch over there. As you can see, right there, we're going to do our last stitch. And pull through 2, perfecto. So now that we have that last stitch, we are going to continue with our waffle stitch. So this is going to go a bit off the double crochet track, though I find the waffle stitch is actually quite simple because it uses double crochet over and over again. So we're going to chain 1, that is yarn over and pull through loop like I just did. And now we're going to turn our work, like so. And here we are, we have turned our work. You can see our double crochet stitches clearly. This is very important. You have to be able to see them clearly because that's a big part of the waffle stitch. And you're going to look at that first chain right there, and we're going to double crochet into that chain. So we always, at the end of the row, we always do this. We chain 1 and we double crochet into the first chain. Remember, double crochet is treble crochet in UK terms. So here we are, double crocheting into that first chain. Perfect. And we seal our next chains. And now we're going to go into the depths of the waffle stitch. So as you see right here, that is our double crochet stitch from last round. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go around the double crochet stitch. So if you understand what I mean, watch. We go yarn over, we're going to insert the hook around that stitch. So not in top, it's around. And now we are going to continue with the double crochet. So it's really not that complicated if you think about it, as long as you know how to double crochet. See, pull through 2 and pull through 2. And there we go. And now we're going to do our usual double crochet stitch. So we're going to go into the top of the stitch, unlike what we just did. And this should be pretty simple. We are going to yarn over, insert the hook into our usual stitch, yarn over again, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull through next two, and pull through next two. So great. And we're going to repeat that. So we're going to do that twice. So we're going to put that into the stitch, yarn over, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull through next two stitches, and again. Great, so now you have two normal double crochet stitches, and we're going to pull out some yarn, and we're going to have a pattern to the waffle stitch. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do our around double crochet stitch. So I'm going to call that our special outer stitch because it comes from the outside. As you can see here, we're going around the stitch, actual stitch, and we're going to do our double crochet. There we go. And if you've been following the pattern, you'll know that our next two stitches are going to be in the normal chains. So here we go, next into the normal chains. That's our one, and number two. I'm going to pull through that stitch and then do the next two loops. Perfect. And that is our repeating pattern. So here I am, I'm just going to be repeating the pattern, so you can do that too. And pretty simple, just we do the outer and then the two normal or inner. And we will repeat that across this row of double crochet stitches. Here we can see our waffle starting to take shape because our outers actually create the outside. And here we are at almost at the end of our double crochet waffle row, and we are going to start, we're just going to continue our pattern. So as you can see, I ended with an outer, so I'm going to keep on going my inners, but you're just going to continue with whatever part of the pattern you're at. And the end of the patterns aren't as complicated as you think, though they are a bit different from the middle of the rows. So I did my two inners, and since the outer is coming next, we're just going to go along with the outer. Here we go. Perfect. And now comes the maybe a little tricky part, which is that we have this strange like 1.5 stitch at the end. I call it 1.5 stitch because you can't really divide into two, but it's not exactly one either. And we don't know what to do with it, so we're going to do inner, outer, and the trick is we look at the other side. You can see here we have two outers. You see how they both stick out? So now we want, on our other end, because we always want the two sides to be identical, we want this to also be an outer. So what we do is we do a double crochet into the front part of the stitch. So yarn over and start to any of the part of that stitch that sticks out, the front of it. It really doesn't matter what, as long as it's the front. So as you can see, I just picked those two loops there, and I'm going to finish my double crochet. So pull through two, and there we go. As you can see, we have two outers, which is exactly what we wanted. So we're done with one row, but we're going to jump right into the second, and we're going to do our always at the end of a row. We're going to chain one and turn. So remember, this is at the end of every row, so not very complicated, but do remember this. So chain one, and you're going to double crochet into that first stitch right there, or you may want to call it second. But first we're going to look at our thing. We're going to see that there are inner and outers. So if you're noticing a pattern, it'll be one inner and two outers, and we're going to follow that. So first we do our double crochet into that first stitch over there. Here we go. So insert a stitch, yarn over, pull through two, and pull through two. Great. And now we're going to observe these inners and outers, and they're very important. So our first one is an inner. And what an inner means is that we go into the normal stitch. That's the top of the stitch. So we're going to double crochet there. Remember, we're always using double crochets. And there we go into the top of the stitch. And so yarn over, pull through two, and yarn over, pull through two. And our next one is an outer. So you can see how it pops out like that. That's an outer. And what we're going to do about this is we're going to do the outer stitch. So we're going to go around the actual stitch. So this is the one that you may not be familiar with, but we did it in the last row. So double crochet into that. And there's another outer after that. So you're going to repeat our outer stitch right now after your second. So here you may see a pattern forming. If you do, great. So there's our outer stitch. And here comes the pattern. We have an inner one again. So as you can see, we started with an inner. And so we are going to continue. There's our inner, and we are going to crochet into the top of that stitch because we know that's what we do when we see inners. And next ones are our outers. We're going to go around. So we're going to continue like that across the row. And just remember this pattern because if you remember this pattern, you got the waffle stitch down. So if you have an outer like I do right now, you go around that stitch in our special stitch. And you have an inner, you go on the top. And here we are at the end of our second row. Great job, guys. And we're just going to show how we end, so pretty simple. As you can see, I ended on an outer, and my next one is another outer. So remember, just do whatever is next for you. You should be able to see both the inners and outers, and now I have an inner. So I'm going to go into that top of that stitch, so you remember. Here we go. Remember, it's all double crochet. And so now we're at that end again, and as you can see, we have to look at the other side, and we see that we have 2 inners. So we're going to do another inner at the end, so that means just going into the top. And one trick is actually, the last stitch is always going to be the same as the one before it. So as you can see, my stitch before it was an inner, and this one's an inner. And as you remember from the last row, they were both outers. So that's just a cool trick, but usually you want to be identical, so if you forget that trick, just look at the end. Already our third row. Great job, guys. We're going to start with our chain 1, like always. And then we're going to double crochet into that first stitch right there. So we yarned over and started to stitch, yarn over, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull through next 2 loops, and next 2 loops. Remember, if this is ever too fast, feel free to stop it and go at your own pace. Oh, great. Now we look at our pattern and we see that there's an outer. So this is going to be a repeat of the first row. So for our outer, of course, we're going to go around. And are you ready noticing a pattern? Yes, it's the same as the first row. So we have an outer, and then we're going to have 2 inners. This time, though, you don't have to memorize the pattern because you can just look at the signs. As you can see, there's an inner ahead of me, which means I'm going to double crochet into the top of the stitch. And my next one is an outer, so I'm going to crochet around the stitch. As you can see, you really have a pattern forming here, so you never really have to memorize this. You can just look at the stitches, and you'll know exactly what to do next. So inner, we're going to go on the top of the stitch right here, and double crochet, another inner. I think it's same as the first stitch. And now we have an outer. And we're going to continue that across our third row. So here we are at the end of our third row, or almost at the end, and we're just going to show you end this. Though I think you probably know because it's the same as our first row. So right now I have 2 inners just because I ended a bit early. So here I'm doing 2 at the top of our stitches. Perfect. And then I'm going to have 1 outer over there. You can see because it pops out like that. And because it's the same as our first row. So here we go. And then because we ended with an outer, we know we're going to do another outer. And this is the same as what we did with the first row, but again, look at the end if you're not sure, and you'll see that they both pop out. So now we're putting it into the front loops, remember this, and we're going to double crochet into those front loops. Remember, any front loops do, as long as it will look as it's popping out. And now that we have finished a row, we are going to do another. And so if you remembered, we always start our rows with a good old chain 1. So we're going to yarn over and pull through. And we're going to double crochet into that first stitch right there. You should really be getting the hang of this now. And so you're going to pull through 2, pull through 2. And now we're going to see we have an inner right there. And if you haven't recognized this, it's going to be another row 2. So we have an inner and the next one's an outer. If you don't remember the row 2 pattern, no worries. Just follow the inner and outers. This is an outer, so we're going around that stitch. And now we have another outer, so we're going to go around that stitch as well. And we're going to have another inner coming up. So we're going to go on the top of that stitch. And I met you at the end, just like always. So we're going to continue with our row. And we only have a few stitches left, but I have some outers over here because they're sticking out, popping out. Another outer. And now we have an inner. And of course we need some yarn, but while we talk, think about what our last stitch is going to be. So our second to last stitch, what I'm doing right now, is going to be an inner, so we go on the top of the stitch. And our rule says that it's always the last stitch is the same as second to last. We know it's going to be, again, at the top of the stitch, just like an inner stitch. But if we didn't know, we could always check the end. So here we go. In there. And perfect, that is our stitch. And this is the wrong side. You can see there's no waffles here, so we turn it over and there are our waffles. And you see all the dimples and how the outer stitches really give it a nice texture. I really think the waffle stitch is a beautiful stitch, and so I think you pretty much got the hang of it. And just to show you how to end your waffle stitch project, we're going to show what we do for a dishcloth. So we chain 1, like always, and we do double crochet into that first stitch. But the difference is that next one, which is an outer, we're not going around